what gives me hope is that young people are so active on platforms like TikTok, speaking truth, talking about the history of voting in this country and the history of civic engagement in this country, raising awareness about the lies that the Trump administration tells, and doing it with music, with humor, with each other and community in ways that are alien to those of us who were born in a different era of politics.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today, as we continue to celebrate the historic turnout at Saturday's No King's Day protests, we're also going to focus on our work to save our healthcare, push back on the big BS bill, and avoid going to war with Iran.
And with all the conversations about what we do next after the protests, I have a great conversation with the founder and executive director of Common Power, powerhouse organizer Charles Douglas III.
I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Hold on. Stay strong. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah. We will build a better world.
Well, Steve, what a weekend. What a weekend. Oh, and isn't it I believe it's also a holiday today.
It is. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Unless you're Donald Trump trying to actively erase our history. And just another thank you to Biden in 2021 for making Juneteenth a federal holiday. So, here we are, and it's always important to celebrate these holidays and acknowledge them, especially important right now when they're under attack.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised Trump hasn't tried to repeal this. This is... It's remarkable that he hasn't. I guess we could still say that this could happen, but I think maybe he even is not stupid enough to do that, although never say never. But yes, what an important day. What a beautiful holiday. I am so, yes, thank you, Joe Biden, indeed. It's a really big deal. Anyone who says, oh, both parties are the same, just, sorry, just.
Yeah. Exactly. And honestly, I had to do a little digging on the internet to see if he had tried to, because I just assumed that in part of their purge of DEI and purge of our history, I thought that he had probably done something about this, but not yet. No. I'll say we can celebrate right now. We'll continue to celebrate no matter what he does.
Yeah, he won't. Yeah, exactly. I mean, right. He'll try everything for effect and to rile up his base, but it sounds like this one might be safe for now. So we'll see.
And his base doesn't seem super riled up right now. Boy, it was like we talk a lot about Schadenfreude, and I know I pronounced it wrong. Sorry, someone who called me out for that before.
I think that's right. Is it Schadenfreude? Oh, well.
I think it's I think it goes up at the end, but anyway, I was corrected on a YouTube comment from a few episodes back.
That's funny.
But anyway, as much as we talk about that, it was pretty delicious watching a little bit of the footage from Trump's really lame birthday parade, which was embarrassing and on so many levels, like deeply damaging to our, how the world looks at us too, which we knew it would be. Mm-hmm. But where was everyone? Oh, I know where they were.
Yeah.
They were at the No Kings protests. Yeah. They were all over the country, over 2,000 protests by various disputed. We're still counting all the jelly beans in the jar, but between 4 and 7 million people, largest protest in our history, which we hoped and thought it would be. And man, it was pretty beautiful.
Let's say between 5 and 7. I don't think anybody thinks it was 4. Because I am tending to believe the higher number there. And I know that there's been extremely confusing estimates all over the map. We had, one group come out right away and say, 14 million or 12 million. It seems that, these things take time to actually count in a way that is reputable and well sourced. I am going to guess right now, and I feel pretty confident in saying this, that the numbers are going to end up at about 7 million. And I will just say that is higher than the Women's March, y'all. So if we did do that, and I believe we did, that will end up, even if it's 6 million, even if it's 5.5 million, that is the biggest march in American history, the biggest single day protest in American history. So congratulations, because I think that is a monumental accomplishment, and I think we can feel pretty confident that the next one will be bigger. So it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And you know it was humiliating to Trump beyond belief. So, double win. So good.
Oh, he looked so sad on his little stage, his little birthday party. He looked so sad. None of the kids showed up.
And
they
he
all went
kept
to the other
falling
party.
asleep, Steve. I mean, can we talk about the fact that this guy keeps falling asleep? What? Why? It is very frustrating that the press refuses to talk about the fact that this man cannot stay awake for any event. This is very troubling. Can you imagine if Biden had fallen asleep at every single event? Impeachment would have been instant, right? It's really hard to stomach this situation.
It's impossible. The sheer hypocrisy, like the volume of things that Republicans would be screaming about. Their silence is deafening, but of course they're complicit, and we know that they would be, and so that's why it's so important that we show up.
But it's not just the Republicans. We expect them to be complicit. It is the fact that the corporate media refuses to talk about it.
Yeah.
That Jake Tapper wrote a book about Biden and won't talk about, it's a systemic unwillingness to look at what is right in front of our faces. And I will just say, I had a very interesting conversation with Qasim Rashid earlier in the week, and we were talking about the political violence that happened this weekend, which we can talk about as well.
Right.
But he was interestingly saying that one of the ways to push back on that is to invest in local news organizations. And it seems like a weird, how do those two connect? But they do, because local news, small or independent media, things like ProPublica, will talk about the reality of what's happening. Whereas these big news organizations they are severed from reality. They are not talking about what is actually happening. They are weirdly sort of detached from the news. They will talk about some things, but not other things. And so really investing in local media, in independent media, in outlets like ProPublica, Wired, weirdly has been doing amazing work, so that we are supporting journalists who are actually talking about Rolling Stone. The Atlantic has been doing pretty great work, supporting the outlets that are actually talking about the reality of the situation, which includes the fact that Trump is obviously, just from a physical standpoint, unfit to be leading right now. That's my rant.
It's so important, and we talk about it. I think a pretty good deal on here, but it bears repeating. Especially I had a conversation with a good friend, Democrat, this morning. Frustrated with Democratic messaging, and I hear this a lot, and I get frustrated with Democratic messaging too. Some do it well, some don't do it so well, but I do believe that our biggest hurdle, our biggest problem is the delivery systems for those messages. Right. And, when we're in these completely different ecosystems and we're getting, squashed by the corporate media, corporate media isn't reporting on what they should be. Yeah. The coverage of Los Angeles and what happened there is a perfect example of that.
Massive fail.
If it bleeds, it leads kind of, ethos for reporting, and just showing the same images of these three burning cars that, and then calling it riots, and Republicans and the Trump administration were able to use that as justification for bringing in the military. So the media had a huge role in that.
Absolutely.
And at the worst of it, you look at what Fox did. I saw a back-to-back comparison of, I don't know if you saw this, of Trump's speech on his birthday parade. Mm-hmm. And when he starts, it's got music playing, and they had the public NPR feed of the speech. Mm-hmm. Or public broadcasting, PBS, whatever. And it was just music and a smattering of applause, not very much noise. It was really subdued. Yeah. And then they showed Fox's version of that. And they literally pumped in cheers and fake sound effects for applause and cheers.
Really?
It was ridiculous. And what, as a sound guy, what drove me crazy the most is they like cut it as soon as he said, "Thank you very much." And then it was like, choop, all of a sudden, everyone stopped clapping and applauding and cheering. It was like, it was the sloppiest job ever. But
wow.
that's, you know, they're supposed to be a news organization, and they're manufacturing a reality for Dear Leader. Yeah. And my Republican aunt in Oklahoma, who I love and who is completely a Fox News junkie and completely subsumed into this Trump cult, called my mom and said, "Wasn't it the most beautiful parade? It was so inspiring. I cried. I cried. He's so great. And I love our military so much." And it was, you know, we're just getting these different visions literally manipulated. Yeah. It's like Russian state TV at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and apparently they called the No Kings protest the No Kings riots. My sister-in-law has a friend who's a Trump supporter, and she said, "Oh, did you hear about those No Kings riots?" My sister-in-law said, "No, I heard about peaceful protests all across the country." And the woman was apparently very surprised to hear that they were peaceful, because that's not how they were depicted. It's a huge problem when you have people who are not being presented with reality.
Yeah, and footage from like years past and actual like kind of riot and violence footage has been shared around and you know, attributed to No King's Day. It's that's what we're fighting against. Yeah. And that's why, you know, anyway, that's my rant on top of your rant to just say, I agree with you. Yeah. We need to be supporting independent journalism, local journalism. They are in dire need of resources, and they are getting squashed out by the corporate media, and the corporate media is doing us no favors. They are also, as you said, complicit in what is happening right now with our country. Yeah.
And I've got, the last thing I'll say about this is I've got a great resource, which is from the Media and Democracy Project, which is a great organization. They've got a list, a searchable database of local news outlets in your area who need support and are doing great work. So we'll put that in the show notes. It's just a way that we can, you know, I think we all should be supporting some local journalism. It's just important to do, even if it's our local public media or NPR station, but just to, you know, support people who are in the city. Because, and this is really the last thing I'll say, is that the one set of organizations who did not call what was happening in LA riots last week were the local news. They didn't call them riots because they were here.
That's right.
So very important to support.
Pretty hard to report on something that when you see the opposite with your own eyes. So.
Right. Anyway.
But anyway, I think it's important for us all, even though obviously there was some tragedy over the weekend, which, you know, is really scary. And, you know, we have a lot of work to do ahead. Like, we know how important it is also to celebrate those wins. This was a huge win. Yeah. This was a huge show of solidarity. Yeah. This was massive numbers of people who hadn't gotten involved before, who have never volunteered on a campaign, maybe never donated to a campaign, who are showing up for the first time. You said it last time when you were talking about being in the streets in last week's episode, the young people that were out there, how many, you know, I mean, just filled the streets. Yeah. It was so inspiring and so great. So, you know, everyone deserves to really take that in and feel the hope. I was talking to one young person. She's 25. She's an environmental activist. And she said, after this weekend, it was the first time I really felt hope. Oh, wow. I really felt like we could come together and turn this around. Yeah. So I got chills just saying that out loud. Yeah. But that's we need to take that energy with us and really own that.
That's beautiful. Oh, that makes me very happy. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So yes, let's celebrate this, y'all. Let's not just let it, you know, get drowned in the news of the day, which is, of course, crazy. And maybe that's a good segue
to the news of the day.
The news of the day, which is a little nuts.
Yeah.
So,
well, go ahead. I mean, we have, and it looks like next week we're going to be interviewing Representative Ro Khanna, and he is one of the authors of this war power resolution on the House side. But do you want to talk about, obviously, this insane megalomaniac who has control of our military and is running our country right now, may be heading us into a war with Iran in the Middle East. So, do you want to talk about what's going on and what you know about this war powers resolution?
Yeah, and I will just start this by saying I'm not like international relations or foreign policy is not my area of expertise. What I will say, though, however, is that Congress ultimately is supposed to be the ones who decide when we go to war. And so when Donald Trump starts talking about we are bombing so-and-so, including us in what Israel is doing, and when he starts telling Tehran to evacuate, which is a city of what, I don't know, 10 million, 16 million, massive area. And then yesterday saying things,
massive country.
Yeah. Unconditionally surrender or else. That feels very much like the president is making a unilateral decision to go to war. And when I say nobody wants this, except for maybe like a few, there's some hawks, there's some, a handful of Americans, but like, I watched a video this morning of a MAGA podcaster. I can't remember his name because I don't know who those guys are. I can't give them the energy to know who they are, but he's a very big one.
We don't need to share that name anyway.
Exactly. But he is calling for Trump's impeachment over this. He apologized for supporting Trump. Even the MAGAs are upset. Like it's dividing the Republican Party, which I love to see. But nobody wants this. So what we can do is there are war powers resolutions in both chambers. There's one in the House that you said Ro Khanna and Massey have introduced. There's one
Thomas
in the
Massey.
Right. There's one in the Senate as well. We will put a script in the show notes. Just call your representatives, or you can just call. As I always say, you don't really need a script, you guys. Call and just say, I don't want to go to war with Iran. Congress needs to do something. Like, that's enough for them to understand where you stand and to mark you down as being in support of the war powers resolutions. So scripts are great, and I know some people really need to have words in front of them, but if you don't, just call and say, Trump should not be able to decide that we go to war. That is a horrifying proposition because he's mentally ill and deranged. And that's kind of enough.
And he doesn't read his briefings. There was some reporting that came out that he, reads very few of his presidential daily security briefings. So, like, I had a neighbor ask me in detail some different scenarios around this, and was this something that he was actually working with Israel on and then pretended he wasn't, but then said he was, or did he know about it? Or, like, all of the scenarios are terrible. Either, it was either just malicious and terrible, or he just didn't know about it and now he's trying to save face, and he's always full of bluster, trying to be the strong man. And like you said, he sleeps through the briefings. So he doesn't, it's a terrible situation, and I think that over the years, really since Bush and the kind of power to take these actions moved in a stronger footing to the presidency, we have needed to put a check on that anyway. Right. And Congress is supposed to be the body that allows any kind of war resolution to move forward, but in this case, this individual is so mentally and utterly unfit to be making unilateral decisions that affect the lives of our service members and our very security, that these resolutions must be in place. We have to put a check on this. And like you said, we're seeing bipartisan support for this. So I don't know. It's Republicans are, to put it kindly, very reticent to go up against the president on any issue, but maybe this is one.
Maybe this is one, and it's important, I think, again, when we talk about why we go protest, one of the reasons we do it is because when Republicans see the largest protest in American history and the number of people who turned out, even in the brightest red of towns, that factors in to their calculations of like, how much do I want to buck this president? Then you add into that all of this horrible polling. Even more horrible polling came out just yesterday that he's wildly underwater on everything.
Yep.
And I mean,
Everything.
plummeting, 22 points plummeting on immigration. So while all of this, it's, yes, everyone can say, oh, it's not enough. He's still, but like, it helps. It chips away at the edges. It gives them more and more and more reason to say, you know what? I can stand up to this guy and I'm not going to pay a price at the polls. In fact, I might even be rewarded at the polls. And ultimately,
That's right.
That's what they care about. So, it's important. And our calls are important and all of this stuff is important. So, yes, we're dealing with a madman, but there is a Congress that can flex its power if it chooses to. And our job is to remind them to be more afraid of us at the polls than of Trump now. So.
That's why it was so great to see everyone out in the streets. You're right, especially in these red cities, in these red states. Like, huge turnout. It was very, very moving, very hopeful.
Yeah.
And we have some more calls to make and stuff too. Obviously, we're fighting this big bullshit or BS bill, however the best alliteration is for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was hopeful that when it got into the Senate that we would see some hard lines on Medicaid and Medicare maybe, but actually they are going further on it. Yeah. And they want deeper cuts there, which is terrifying. And so, we need to make calls on that. Do you want to break down those changes and where we stand with that? Because where you may lack in foreign policy, I know you are completely up to speed here.
I'm up to speed. I mean, it's coming out in dribs and drabs. What I know for sure is that, yes, they've made Medicaid worse. So the cuts are worse. They've added work requirements for parents, which did not exist before. So if you have a kid who's older than 14 now, you have work requirements. And again, like, what we're really supposed to be calling these, because the phrase work requirements is a Republican sort of a way of massaging the reality to make it sound like, oh, of course, everybody supports work requirements, but they're really more like job loss penalties. So if you lose your job because there's high unemployment, they're setting it so that unemployment has to be at 10% before you can get a waiver for not being able to find a job. So that's higher than it was in the last recession. So basically, you can be in a recession and still have to work or lose your assistance, and then you can be a parent who has no childcare for your 14-year-old, or and you have to work. So it's worse. And then they've also
just devastating.
They're just
devastating to so many families. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, do.
But it's like, healthcare is what, lack of healthcare is what puts so many people into poverty. And, when you often lose your job because you're not able to work because of a healthcare situation, and now you can't even get the healthcare because of this. It's just so cruel and devastating.
It's so cruel. And you know what I found out this week too, which I did a video about? This plan is the most regressive tax plan proposal in 35 years. And what that means, in case you're unclear on regressiveness, because we're not all tax policy experts, but it basically means hits the poor and helps the wealthy. So this is the first tax plan proposed in 35 years that not only doesn't it, so usually even when Republicans are like, we're going to do tax cuts, they'll do a tiny little tax cut for the poor people, and then it will sort of build up to a huge tax cut for rich people. This costs poor people. The poorest people in America will pay more under this plan. And then it slopes up to help the richest people by far the most. But if you're poor, this will cost you, I'm hearing estimates between $1,400 and $2,500 a year. It will cost you. It's brutally cruel. Healthcare cuts. And then Senate Republicans have added in a massive sell-off of public lands. Massive, that was stripped out of the House, brought back, and is larger. So they're trying to sell off a huge quantity of public land. So it is just, I'm going to say, it's a shit sandwich, Steve. It's a terrible bill across the board. And at this point, it's just really sort of catastrophic if it passes. So we really do have to work hard. And analysis I'm hearing anywhere from 16,000 to 51,000 Americans a year will die as a result of this plan. So conservatively, 16,000 a year, and then on the high end, 51,000 a year will die as a result of this plan. Tell your friends.
It's hard to fathom how these Republicans can look at those numbers and be like, cool, well, that's acceptable loss of life so that these, our billionaire buddies can get their tax breaks.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing is that when Americans know about this plan, as we've seen, it polls horribly. It's like 2-1. Americans oppose it, but the problem is there's still 50% of Americans who don't know. So if you're listening to this podcast, talk to your friends and family. Tell them that they're very likely going to lose their Medicaid or their SNAP, and that this plan will cost you money in so many other ways. If you have a student loan payment, it's going to go up about $400 a year. Your utility bills, $400 a month. Utility bills for all of us are going to go up $450 a year. All of our healthcare premiums are going to go up. Like, this bill is a fucking disaster. And it's just, there's no other way of saying it. But they need to hear from people that they haven't heard from yet. So get your friends and family to call, folks.
Great point. Once again, we're full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning. The media is not talking about this. Nope. It's up to us to get this message out there. I'll try to call Aunt Marta. She's pretty dug in, but I'll give her a call because she has health issues, and this is going to affect her a lot.
Is she on Medicaid? You stand a chance. I have a family member who has a Trump supporting friend who is on SNAP, and she apparently said this week, I'm pretty pissed. I'm pretty upset with Donald Trump. I didn't think he'd actually. She said I didn't believe he'd actually do it. I know Democrats were saying he was going to do it. I didn't think he'd actually do it, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose my SNAP.
Okay. And she probably will.
She probably will. Yeah.
So that's a great segue into my reason for hope, and how could it not be this incredible weekend of protests, peaceful protests. Let's, keep saying that, and countering this ridiculous narrative that there was any violence going on our end, with these, really wonderful, peaceful rallies. And, after the interview, we'll share some pictures and stuff from someone who called in, but I don't know if you saw, the Atlanta rally where, the Proud Boys showed up as counter protesters.
I did not.
So some Proud Boys showed up, and it almost got heated there. And then, as like the chef's kiss, perfect de-escalation, this brass band made up of tubas and trombones started just playing right in front of what was going on and drowning everything out. And everyone started dancing, including some of the Proud Boys, who started like moving around to the music and everything.
Oh my God, that's so amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So, this really gives me hope, is that we can show up on mass, largest single day of protest in U.S. history. It's what I had hoped and thought it would be. It's what we needed, and it's what we got. And so that gives me a lot of hope moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I could definitely do No Kings as my reason for hope also. But since we've already talked about that a lot, I just thought I would throw in the fact that I read this week that U.S. drug deaths, especially in young people, dropped by 40% last year. And we're talking specifically, I think, about fentanyl, and this is under the age of 35 among people. And the reason I bring this up as such an amazing thing is because we're in such an anti-science moment. I mean, I'm not anti-science, you're not, but the administration is, and yet this is a victory of science. This is a victory of the NIH and of Narcan, which is now widely available, which is something the Biden administration worked very hard to do, to make it more accessible so that we've got Narcan at our house. My 15-year-old knows, most of their friends carry Narcan, not that they're using fentanyl, but because they know that out in the world, these things happen. And it saves lives. It's easy to use. Anyone can just, it's a puff up the nose and you save a life. And it is helping with the fentanyl epidemic. And this is something that is this is public health. This is, science. These are the reason that the federal government needs to support these things is because it saves lives. And I really want to give Joe Biden some credit. I just heard recently he's still like the most unpopular president in like living history. I don't understand that at all. I understand the problems with his Middle East policy, but that guy did so much good domestically. And little things like this is policy. When people say, oh, government doesn't affect me, politics don't affect me. Well, if you overdose on fentanyl and someone gets you that Narcan, that was politics affecting you. Because it is widely available. And I will just add as a PS that the Trump administration has made moves towards restricting its availability. Now, hopefully they fail, but this is why elections matter. It's one of a million reasons. But for now, let's celebrate the fact that they dropped by 40% last year. That is a huge deal. That's lives saved, parents who still have their kids who still have their parents. It's a very big deal.
It's a huge deal. And, Biden is the most impactful president in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
Since Johnson, there is no president that has done more and been able to accomplish more than Biden did. And that, like you said, that his approval ratings are so low. Like, I understand why that narrative gets out there, but if you just look at what he actually did, and to this also over the years, we've seen some wins in court cases against the Sackler family and against these drug companies that have resulted in huge payouts that have gone to drug prevention and resources and all that. And we're seeing the effects of that too. So it's a great reason for hope. And I'll tack on that there was a recent judge decision that the NIH had to return the funding to programs that had been defunded. And so another win in the courts against Donald Trump and his slashing of congressional appropriated funding that he doesn't have a right to do. So lots of reasons for hope, but that's great. Thanks for bringing that one to our attention.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it for us for now. We'll be back after this interview to talk more about the No Kings protests and share some of your pictures. Until then, a great interview with Charles Douglas III. Charles Douglas III is the executive director of Common Power. He leads their work focused on direct election impacts and education as an on-ramp to civic engagement. Charles, thanks so much for being here with me. It's really great to meet you.
Happy to join. Good to meet you.
Yeah. First of all, before we get into the work you're doing now, you've had a really unique path to getting where you are now. You had a 13-year career in marketing at Starbucks before you launched Common Power. Can you talk about how you first got involved as an organizer and what's that journey been like?
Yeah, I mean, my very first experience organizing was actually with my dad. So my stepfather was a Black Panther out of Oakland, California. He was a young teenager during that time, so I was kind of born into it a little bit. He taught me very early on that the work that we do takes people and structures. Movement is not just about speeches and marches. There are complex systems of human beings that make this all work. So a part of what I participated in and learned from and kind of brought first into the corporate world and then into this work was the systems building around people. But yeah, it was student march in high school. It was starting the Black Affinity group at Starbucks. It was dipping my toe in the water on protesting here and there. But I've been in the game, so to speak, for it feels like my whole life.
Yeah, born into it, I guess. And where did Common Power come from? How did that start?
Yeah. So Common Power comes from uh, a bunch of Seattleites saying, "Hey, we're tired of on presidential election nights. By the time the results get to us, nobody cares anymore. Okay, you see what's going on the East Coast. What happens to Florida? What happens to the blue wall in the Midwest, or it used to be the blue wall in the Midwest? And then when it gets to the West Coast, it's kind of over. It's Washington, California, and Oregon, and everybody knows. So there's an overabundance of progressive energy and resources in Seattle, and the community here after 2016 and Trump's election, his first term, realized that there was more that we wanted to do. So we hopped on planes and knocked on doors in 14 states around the country. We had 400 people that did that out of Seattle that year. And that was the year that I said, okay, it's time to do more. We've got something here that we can scale. And I left Starbucks to do this work full time.
It's amazing. It was similar story. I consider myself class of November 2016.
All right.
I worked in the entertainment industry. My dad was counsel to President Johnson, so I also grew up around politics and grew up in D.C., but ended up in the entertainment industry. But once Trump was elected, saw that I'm here in Los Angeles, where similarly we have a lot of progressive energy, and and so I jumped into work doing the same kind of stuff. So that's really cool, and I want to hear more about what you're doing. We talk a lot on this show about building resilience also, because you have a unique perspective on this because it's a family affair for you. You've been in this forever, but it's not even a marathon. It's like, it's our life's work, and it's really important to find the balance and take care of ourselves in this work too. It's hard for many of us, and I imagine you being on the front lines, and just living and breathing this work all the time. But do you find some balance in your life? How do you take care of yourself in this work?
Yeah. So one of the lessons from the civil rights movement, and we're students of history here at Common Power. We spend a lot of time learning about what they did in the civil rights movement, how they did it, how they sustained. I say this often, but Rosa Parks refused to get up from the bus seat in 1955. And we got a Voting Rights Act in 1965. So the question is, and that wasn't the beginning and the end of the civil rights movement, but these are these markers here. Mm-hmm. How did they sustain their movement for a decade, from one milestone to another? And so we go back and we learn from them. So that's one of the things is I spend a lot of time, we at Common Power spend a lot of time, not just pouring through the books, but learning from civil rights leaders. We take trips down there and we talk to them. There's some of them who are still alive who crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we ask them, how did you build this local resistance? They talk about things like a mirror government that they ran in the town. They talk about mutual aid. They talk about these things, and we take those tools and we go, okay, let's implement pieces of that into what we're doing today. The other piece is that we also learned that, Kamala Harris didn't invent joy. Okay. Joy has been an essential part of movements for so long. And so we weave those cultural pieces into how we door knock, how we build community when we go out to protest and stuff. There are songs, there's music that we play, there's food, there's community events for the sake of just community. And what ends up happening is that if you weave those pieces in to the work that you do, then the work ends up feeding you while you're out there doing it. And I think that's the thing we've tapped into is at Common Power, we're giving our all. We're on the front lines. We're knocking doors. And also it's not just a spend down of our energy. It's feeding our spirits as well. So I leave these trips sometimes and I'm like, I feel great, man. I just fought for democracy. I just hung out with some cool people. I just spent time with old folks and young folks knocking on doors that came from all over the country. And I'm feeling good about this country. This is good. I can do this forever. I can go all day.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I can relate. I've said a lot. Action is the best antidote for anxiety. And I was just talking with Jess, my co-host, for another episode of the show about when we talk to elders in this movement. We were just at the California Democratic Party, and
cool.
Dolores Huerta was at the convention. Dolores Huerta,
goodness.
95 years old, was
Legend.
speaking. Legend. And just when you talk to folks, and Secretary of State Shirley Weber too, who's been doing this for a long time, they have this joy that they carry with them in this work because they're part of this community. And when you're trying to get a new volunteer to go knock on doors, something that sounds scary, sounds very counterintuitive. Last thing I want to do is go knock on some stranger's door and start talking to them. But when you let them know, like what it feels like to be part of that community and have those impactful conversations, it's great. So anyway, I don't need to restate what you said even better, but thank you for that. And I do want to hear, like, you definitely center training and development in your work as both a way to build diverse new leadership and also as an on-ramp into civic education, which I believe in so much. I used to be the director of training for Swing Left. And I'd love to hear more about the Action Academy, the Institute for Common Power, and your overall goals in the education space.
Yeah. So what we say is education to action. And that when all of us read about the civil rights movement and the things that were done in the past and the wins back then, it activated us to want to do something today. It felt more possible. It felt like we're walking in their footsteps. So education is this massive catalyst. There's also like the very real thing where when people learn about the system of government, learn about how it functions, and then understand how accessible it actually is, they feel more empowered to participate when they realize, when I reach out to my senator and they write back or something, or call them and there's someone that answers and they care, like I feel like I'm doing something here. So education is this like unlock mechanism. It's this thing, and young and old. It happens with people who were alive on Bloody Sunday and they were, young teenagers. It happens with Gen Zs who are kind of understanding how the government works now. And so we root ourselves in that first. Action Academy is this very cool 10-week program that happens every single summer. It's completely virtual. And this year we had our most applicants we've ever had. We had 400 people apply that are college age students from 42 states around the country and from 20 countries around the world.
Wow. Amazing.
Around the world. And this is after Trump's tariffs. This is in spite of what our president is currently doing.
Or maybe because of,
Or maybe because, right. So there's this there's this appeal. And we thought last year would be the most popular year. We thought Kamala Harris and the presidential is going to bring out the most people. It turns out that when we sounded the alarm for our country, when we realized how bad it is as a society, how bad things are, that's when the young folks said, I'm in. I got you. I'll come help. And oh, by the way, I'll come help, and I'm not even from your country. I'm going to come help and be a part of what you're doing. And that again, these things that fill you with hope, that filled me with a lot of hope. Action Academy program. The Institute is this other completely different thing that is basically continuing education for people who door knock with us or not, people who find us on social media who maybe like some portion of political history or the civil rights movement learning, and that is the hook for them that gets them to think about doing something today. So it's these kind of bite-sized Zooms that we do for people that are about one topic. Like I said, maybe the Voting Rights Act, maybe the bus boycott of Montgomery. And that kind of brings people in. It also serves as a way to keep our volunteers, moving and going. So, there are people who knock on doors and then go into these programs. And that's the answer to, what do you do when there's no elections? What do you do, in the odd years that should not be off years? Okay. What do you do in these moments? And the answer is you show them this other thing that keeps them understanding where they are in the context of history, keeps them inspired by these heroes that we learn from, and then they're ready to go for the next election.
I love that. I believe in that 100%, and I'm so grateful that you're doing that work. That's amazing. So you mentioned off years. There are no off years.
No off years.
You and I know this. We need to be organizing all the time. And we actually do have a couple of elections coming up, very important ones in New Jersey and Virginia. I want to read from your website in regards to your field work. This is a quote from your website. When we choose to work with a local partner organization, we're following their lead. We carefully partner with local orgs that share our values, and while working with them, we fully adopt their plans, priorities, and tactics. We know that the most lasting change is driven by local citizens. Bravo, applause, tip of the hat, sir. All of the things, I've seen so many examples of the opposite of that really going badly when people just come in and try to dictate to local organizations that have been doing this work and building that community how they should be reaching out and talking to voters. So I love that you're doing that, and I want to encourage people to check out your org and get hooked in with your work, because that's how we do it, is by supporting the orgs.
Yeah, it's essential. The way our country's working out because of these Trump years is that we're so polarized, and the highest need is in these battleground states. Well, the most resources because of brain drain out of some of these red states because of their policies. There's in these urban cities and these blue areas. So that's where, when it comes time for us to help, we got to pull from these places. Well, we bring our kind of liberal elite attitudes. You can only imagine what it sounds like for a group of people from Seattle to call somebody in Florida and say, we want to come help. They're like,
I don't have to imagine, because I've made those calls, and I've fielded some angry calls from other people too. So
yeah. Like if they believe you, because first of all, like when we call them, we say, hey, I want to send, 24 people. They come fully trained. We're going to knock on doors and knock on doors following your maps. We don't come with our own data, and we're going to do it all for free. They don't believe it. The first time we made calls on this and emails, they thought we were some trick. They thought we were some like Republican kind of op. And so after we built up a reputation and solidified relationships, now they understand, like, having us is a value. But it took for us to humble ourselves. It took for us to say, we're going to leave whatever plans we have, whatever ideas you have. That's not going to, you're not going to go and tell them that how to win in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. You're going to leave that behind, and you're going to come knock on doors and follow their lead.
Virginia, of course, is
that's
not
your backyard.
Only always a very, very important, not only a very important election, but is also a major bellwether to what we do in the midterms. And I've said this many times. I really, don't love looking at polls, but I do like looking at the volunteer engagement in the Virginia elections, because I find if the energy is up to a certain level, a year before the midterms in Virginia with volunteers, then, we're going to do well. With field. So
Virginia is interesting because it's a place where both sides try out new tactics. You see the messaging they're trying out for the midterms is in Virginia. Some of the volunteer engagement, like you're saying, is like those methods are all in Virginia. Virginia is right next to DC, so all of the recent firings of federal workers are going to ignite this population of people that live in Northern Virginia. And that's going to be something that tells us a lot about federal workers and the role they're going to play in elections around the country, because federal workers are not just in DC or around DC. So that's really interesting. You've got this Republican governor who at one time was being floated for presidential candidate in the GOP, right? He was seen as a centrist Republican, and now he's, walked in lockstep with Donald Trump. So there's all these measures in Virginia that are always really interesting for us. More than anything, though, I look forward to working with our partner on the ground there, New Virginia Majority, who again has been doing work year in, year out, whether the cameras are there or not. whether it's about elections or not. They did a bunch of work during COVID. They do a bunch of messaging around health and around employment. Like they're just one of the best groups that has done work in that state. We work with them every single election that we can. I always contact Tram. I'm always like, hey, do you need us for this one? Are you good? But then it's always a good example of a grassroots organization who supports candidates and then after they're elected continues to work with them. So on top of the election, I always find like it's a good opportunity for us to learn too from somebody who's doing the work on the governing side as well. And and the advocacy side. So, all these are like going back to how I get fed. It's the work, it's the community, and it's the opportunity to continue to learn, not just about how we win, but about this great country that we live in.
Love that. Yeah, New Virginia majority is amazing. I got to know Tran a little bit a few years ago. She was on How We Win, my previous podcast, and so that's great. I love all these partnerships, and it gives me a lot of hope moving forward. Let me ask you the last question that we ask everyone on here. What's giving you the most hope right now?
What's giving me the most hope are young folks right now who are finding new ways to fight. So there's always this critique where people are like, hey, a bunch of older people will be at the Tesla takedowns or something. And they'll say, where are the young people at? Where are the young people? And I always tell them, okay, let's talk about this. So we know that Donald Trump won the election because he went on non-traditional media and talked to people where they were there. He reached young people on their phones. So do you think that the most impactful place to reach these swing voters are at Tesla dealerships and protests, or do you have to meet them online where they are? And that's what gives me hope, is that young people are so active on platforms like TikTok, speaking truth, talking about the history of voting in this country and the history of civic engagement in this country, raising awareness about the lies that the Trump administration tells, and doing it with music, with humor, with each other and community in ways that are alien to those of us who were born in a different era of politics. They're doing more than we think. And when we peek into it and get to see it, it is so amazing, the work that they're doing, the minds that they're changing, the stories they're telling. That's the stuff, the next generation and what they do, that stuff gives me hope.
I love that. Man, I'm going to go back after this and do a re-listen to the miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And I'm just so thrilled to meet you and have this conversation. And thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing. And I hope we have the opportunity to meet out in the field someday soon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's hit some doors, Steve. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thanks so much, Charles.
Thanks.
Okay, we're back, Jess, and just a reminder to our friends out there and listeners, we want to hear from you. We want to hear and see what you're doing. You can call us at 818-824-4286. You can send us a text there too, or you can email us at hello@practivistpod.com. And we got a great email from someone who attended a No Kings rally. Do you want to read that, Jess?
Yeah, she said, hi, Jessica and Steve. A few photos from No King's Day on my little Pacific Northwest island of 11,000 people. I'm pretty sure this is the biggest turnout ever at a protest here. This is Vashon Island, Washington. 770 people. It was wonderful. And then she showed people in costume. I'm a big supporter of people wearing costumes to protest, by the way. I told my kid next time I'm wearing a costume, although it was very hot at ours, so that might have been a bad idea. But yeah, that's True. A great costume.
For those who can't see it, I just want to describe, you've got a big Trump head in prison stripes with a couple of police officers leading him away, led by the Statue of Liberty. So.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you. I forgot that not everybody is watching this. Then her and her husband, we don't do Kings in America, her sign says. And then... oh, this is good. She has a picture of a sign, and maybe I saw a picture of this sign, or I saw someone else who did the same thing, which is taking a no parking anytime sign and covering up the PAR. So it says no king anytime. Brilliant. And then a picture of just a bunch of people standing along the road. And she writes, a bunch of us had drums, and we discovered an added benefit of having the drums. There was one counter-protester there, and every time he started yelling, "You're wasting your time," etc., we all started banging away on our drums to drown him out. Others also sang loudly over him. Eventually he got frustrated and left. Fantastic. Perfect way to, quote, not engage with the counter-protester. And she says, "Thank you for your inspiration, Emily H." And that is fantastic and goes along with what you said before. Bringing instruments, bringing noisemakers, focusing relentlessly on the joy. We had lots of dancing at the Los Angeles protest, and in fact, a big truck with a fantastic live band playing sort of, it seemed like maybe Mexican heritage music, led us the whole way, and we danced, and it adds a really important element to a protest when you bring those drums, bring your instruments, bring your voices, and use them.
Totally. So, yeah. I mean, music is the best de-escalator. It's also just the best. And we had a similar truck in Pasadena that was doing the same thing. And very hard, even though try as they might to describe these as some kind of violent or riot or whatever. They try to describe it as pretty difficult when all the footage is of music and dancing and celebration in the streets. So
and kids and dogs and it's
families.
Tough to spin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thanks for writing in, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you for that. Also, like Vashon Island, this small little place, and seeing all those folks coming out. That's also really inspiring. So.
I agree.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget that all of the links for our actions, as always, are in our show notes. So click those links and take action. Please do subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find us. And share our show with your friends and family members. Maybe I'll share it with my Aunt Marta, the Trump supporter. I don't know. She doesn't want to listen to this.
She doesn't want our podcast.
But share it with your friends and family members who might listen, and make sure they're taking action to help us win as well. If you're able to support our show on Substack, we would be really grateful for that. We need your support. You'll get an ad-free version of our show as well. And we will be back next week with more Practivist Pod. So until then, remember, hope is an action.
Oh, no.